and welcome to The Healing Way. My name is Richard Clark, and on this video I'd like to give my overview of cancer. As I've been talking about in previous videos, I've been building up. I've made a start, scratching at the surface really, and I've realised that cancer is its own, it needs its own study, its own line of study. It can't be lumped in with the other chronic long-term conditions. It is very varied at its base. And by that I mean obviously there are probably hundreds of different types of cancers. But what I'm seeing is that it's like an umbrella which starts at a point and then spreads out. And my overview is that point. What is the point at the top? Where does it all start from? And how does it break down into all the different cancers? That's what I want to get at. I've been looking at these things for some time, and they are very interesting, very complex. There is no quick fix. It's not going to be an easy task to work through. It seems to me it's going to be very much like the layers of an onion. You start with the first layer and you just get down to the next layer. Right, talking about the overview and, if you like, level one. What is going on? I've spoken about these things. I've tried to build up to this on different videos, but as I say, this whole subject needs a completely different approach. It's environmental, which means it comes from the outside. I'm not talking about the cancer itself, which might well be, but the actual start of the process that causes the, I don't know if breakdown is the right word, but it opens the door to certain conditions which open the door to other certain conditions in a cascade effect until you get to the point where cancer appears. I should say I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a cancer specialist at all. I view myself as the word I've always used, which is healer. And healer to me means somebody who heals, who gets rid of things. Okay? Because I have two choices. I can either just do the healing and not tell anyone about how the methods came about, so presumably when I die it all dies with me. Maybe a few will carry on, they'll look at this video archive and study it. But I want to actually put out all the background. I want the video, all the background, so that people can actually carry on, work things through themselves, take it forward, take it sideways, take it downwards even, and study areas that might not have occurred to me. Because people, generally speaking, are very ingenious. Once the door is opened, where we're not good is we don't open doors. It's like there's a line, so far, no further. And this is very true of technology now. We are of the opinion, whether it's spoken or unspoken, that one day science and technology and doctors and medicine will solve everything. Everything will be solved. And it's nice if that was the truth, but having studied the body, the energy conditions, the way the immune system works, the way illnesses work, I honestly don't believe that. I wish I could sit here and say yes, one day science will sort it all out, but I don't think it will. The way it is at the moment, if you imagine somebody having a splinter and then everybody goes off, right, we've got to get rid of this splinter, what should we do? Well, we'll go off and analyse the DNA. It seems to me a little bit missing the point. What you need to get rid of a splinter is a pair of tweezers to take it out. Analysing the DNA or the nature of the wood, where it comes from, or anything like that, isn't going to do anything for the problem. The problem is what it is, and the right tool needs to be fashioned and shaped to eliminate it. The right understanding needs to come into being to prevent it happening again, to stop it happening again. A lot of the conditions, as I've spoken about in the previous video that I'm just uploading now, a lot of the conditions that we suffer from come about because our bodies have broken down already. We're already suffering from damage caused by the environment, outside factors, before these major illnesses arrive. I don't think they could either get in or would be so harmful or so damaging if our bodies hadn't more or less fallen apart in the first place. We are suffering from a huge reduction in general health. That's without any symptoms showing at all. You can look at people you'd think were healthy walking around and think they are healthy, but they are at about, in my view, 30% of their potential health. And when they drop lower, then it opens the door to all these illnesses, all these things that are always out there lurking, waiting to get in. Okay, back to cancer. So what is the overview? The overview is we are powered by the sun. We receive life from the sun. This is obvious. It's not some big revelation. It's obvious that all life on Earth is dependent on the sun. But I'm not talking about life in that sense. I'm talking about a specific type of power that I've referred to as life force. And life force comes from the sun. And when I spoke to Gavin about this, my friend who I collaborate with on healing from time to time, he immediately objected. He said, you can't call it force because force is too much of a physical thing. This is much deeper. And he's right. He's right. It is a power that exists in a different place. It's back to... I'm going to have to do a video on this. It's back to the power that mainly lives in a different place, not in our physical universe, but has an effect on our physical universe. So I'll have to stick with this term because after he flagged up these objections, I did go and think about it and think, well, what can I call it? Life force. Life force to me is above energy. It's more profound type of effect or interaction. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. A life interaction, a life. Well, whatever it is, the sun gives out this, I'll stick with this term, life force, that our cells, that comes from the sun through the atmosphere to our bodies, and our cells convert life force into life energy. I've talked about this on other videos, and the cells is something else I need to take a strong look at. The cells are very important. They're very important in the way that they convert the immaterial energies or powers into material energies or powers that the body can utilise. So the cells also exist in two places. They exist in this other place which is perceivable but not material. Yeah. So the cells are there as well. Now then, what happens is, I've spoken about this before on a video, and I did say that it seems to me there is a gas that's released from electricity cables, high tension electricity cables, the type of cables that transmit power from power stations to cities, and they're held above ground by what we call in the UK pylons. And electricity is transmitted in this way. Now what I've seen is that there's a gas that's given off from these cables when it rains. When it rains, there's a combination. Now, I call it a gas, but it's going to be another intangible energy, another energy that can't be measured or perceived by eyes. It can't be seen by eyes, but it can be perceived by mind. And this is what's happened. I've seen this gas. It's like a green corrosive gas I've looked up what the cables are made from, and they seem to be made of aluminium, which in part doesn't seem to fit. Aluminium doesn't seem to fit. Some, I think, old style cables were made of copper. Now that would work. Copper cables with a copper core, that would create this corrosive type gas, because you see this on copper. Copper doesn't rust, but it does corrode, and it can have this green corrosiveness on it. Corrosion can form on copper. And I suspect, sitting here talking about this, I suspect that their environmental pollution gets onto the cables, an acid type pollution, and that reacts with the copper and the electricity passing through. Anyway, this corrosive type gas is given off, and it spreads all through the atmosphere. It doesn't stay local, it's everywhere. A small amount of this covers the planet. And it's through this gas, this certain type of gas, this corrosive gas, I call it a gas, it might be an energy. If it's energy, it's inert, it doesn't energise anything, not that I can see. Anyway, the sunlight travels through the atmosphere that contains this gas, this corrosiveness, and as it passes through this sunlight that contains the life force is damaged, and an element or an aspect is stripped out or blocked. It's prevented from reaching people. And what this does is it's the controlling element, because there's two elements to this life force. One is expansion. It gets, the cells use it for growth, expands, not just the cells of our body, all life. And there's two aspects, the expansion aspect and the controlling of that expansion aspect. And it's the controlling of that expansion aspect that gets blocked or stripped out. So we only receive one part of the life force, the part that expands. And it seems to me this is why people are getting bigger. If you look at a few hundred years ago, you go into houses that are hundreds of years old, the door openings are about a foot, about this much smaller. I've been in old cottages when I used to live in the village. You used to go into a cottage and you'd be ducking down under the roof. So the roof would be like that and the doors would be even lower. So people obviously were a lot smaller in centuries ago, pre-industrial. And the explanation I've heard for this is because we started using fertilisers. You know, we started to use fertilisers to grow crops. These fertilisers get into people and make us grow. But now I think it's because of the reduction of the controlling aspect of the life force. So the life force now is just expansion. There's no controlling side to it. Why the sun, a thought that's just occurred to me, is why the sun would chuck out this type of life force with this particular aspect. I'll have to look into that one. That's a bit intriguing, why it does that. So this to me is day one. This to me is the starting point. Ground zero, whatever it is. This is the beginning of cancer, or at least it's an open door. Yeah, the one opens the door to the two open the door to the four, and it multiplies downwards until you get to a point where you've got this huge broad spread of cancers all through people. Because it puzzled me. I remember reading they were talking about these cigarette companies were trying to introduce smoking into the third world because it was in decline in the Western civilizations. They were smoking was in decline, so they thought, well, let's market cigarettes in places like India. And the health people were saying, well, yeah, we now expect lung cancer to go through the roof because people are smoking. And I always thought, yes, that's right, it will. There's no denying it, it's a fact. You smoke, people who smoke get lung cancer. But it doesn't seem to me its first cause. There has to be 2 or 3 preliminary things in place before the smoking causes lung cancer. I mean, yeah, smoking is a filthy blooming habit anyway. There's no two ways about it. And if it doesn't give you lung cancer, it will give you all kinds of other things, emphysema and everything else. But I think as far as cancer goes, and everything else, viruses that cause cancer I've read about, and different bacteria they say are cancer causing, different chemicals, yes they are. But there has to be 2 or 3 other things there first, in my view. And the first thing is this breakdown of sunlight. The breakdown, our absorption of sunlight. This could well be because what's happening now, people talk about too much sun causes skin cancer. You know, that could be a factor. It's the sunlight is changing, the atmosphere is changing. And space is changing. The space between us and the sun that the light passes through is changing. We are changing things. And it always seems to me to come down to it all being environmental. It comes from the outside. Yeah? Oh, at some point there's another factor here, as I've spoken about on previous videos, this whole cascade of this energy down through the Higgs field. I've talked extensively about the Higgs fields, and there seems to be a cascade of this peculiar kind of energy. So not only once the body is damaged, this damage is passed on, but there's also the death power. This puzzles me, and it still puzzles me, why the death power, or the power that regenerates us between cycles, is probably a better way of putting it, why that gets involved. Because at some point that enters. It doesn't enter initially, but at some point, about level 3 I would think, level 3 step down, at some point the death power enters, or the regeneration power that regenerates between cycles, between life and death and life. That comes in, but only with cancer. I've said this before, this is very interesting. Only with cancer. But I want to take this steady and just work my way through it. There's all kinds of pushing out in all kinds of directions. It really is a wonderful time. It is just a wonderful time to be able to do all this, to get into it, to be part of it. That might be a better way of putting it. Okay. Thank you very much if you got this far. I'm talked out again. So I'll do another video, probably not today. I'll go for a walk. I want to talk about where we are on the pushing back the boundaries of the healing with energy methods, the recovery of the body. Once all the crap's been cleaned out and there's been a lot of repair work, re-energising, sorting out a lot of stuff, then there is the bringing all the different parts back together. You need to create a kind of resonance field in the body based on different elements that can synchronise the different parts, because we need to create a body that is, once it's healed, is impervious to more penetration by anything really, because it's not enough to just heal people and then they just catch or walk into the next thing that comes along. until we knuckle down and start changing how we live, stop chucking out the poisons into the air and the water, and we wake up to how we're damaging ourselves, we need to create bodies that are like suits of armour, that are impervious. As a temporary solution, all of this is a temporary solution. The only long-term real answer to what we're doing is to live intelligently. Now that is it's far beyond anything I can talk about, living intelligently, because that is where we all come together and work things out. It's far beyond the healers, what I've set myself for healing. Living intelligently, doing away with the harmful factors. All my aim is to point them out. Okay, great. Once again, thank you so much. If you've got this far, I no doubt will be videoing and blogging again, so if you'd like to come along and have a listen and have a read, it's really appreciated. We may never meet, but don't ever think you are not appreciated or you're taken for granted. You are very, very important to me, or I would not be doing this. That's the message. Thanks very much. Hope you join me on the next one.